go ahead and get started.
All right, sounds good. Thanks so much, Crystal, and thank you everybody for joining on this Thursday or Friday even for this webinar. Really appreciate your time. And so today I'm going to go over Van Westendorp price sensitivity meter and Gabor-Granger. So why am I talking about this today? Well, customers need to understand what they're buying. Otherwise, the price point of a product or of a service will not be accurate. Wanting to know what customers' precise willingness to pay for products or to pay for services is considered, can even be considered the master reason for market research. So if you've ever wondered, or if you ever said to yourself, you may not know what a product, or you may not know if a product or service that you sell is too expensive or too cheap, or you may need to determine what is the price elasticity of a product in case there are key competitors that come into play, things like that. So how would you be able to interpret these different dimensions and have a true value of a product or of a service? And how does that data come full circle? Besides simply asking your audience to simply guess a price of a product that they look at or that they evaluate, whether it be an existing product or a new one. So I'm just going to give you a background on direct pricing research in general. The reason I do this is because Van Westendorp and Gabor-Granger are two of the most popular forms of direct pricing research. Well, what is direct pricing research? What it does is it assumes that the respondents or your customers have some understanding of what a product or a service is worth. Therefore, it makes sense to ask explicitly about the price. Whereas with indirect pricing research techniques, for example, conjoint analysis, discrete choice analysis, where you're combining price with other attributes, you're extracting the feelings about price from those results. So while price is a factor, it isn't the factor, or it isn't what is asked head on to customers or to your respondents. While those research techniques are certainly worth it, if the overarching concern is price, stick with those direct techniques for pricing research. They're less expensive, they'll be easier to set up and easier to incorporate with your qual research when used in surveys, and they're easier to explain analytically. It's easier to explain to your managers and to your stakeholders. There are other forms of direct pricing techniques as well. They're a lot simpler. Like you can ask open-ended questions, like saying, how much would you pay for this? And then your respondent provides you with a numeric answer. You could also ask yes, no. Would you be willing to purchase this product at X number of dollars, at $20 or at $30, which is just a simple yes or no. The problem with each of these is there's too much work on the back end for analytics. Not so much the data customization, but not the survey development end, but the analytics end. It also doesn't tell the full story. It doesn't bring the data full circle. And plus sometimes respondents will treat these questions like a negotiation rather than providing 100% honest answers, especially when open ends. Respondents, if you don't provide an appropriate range, the respondent can put as little as $1 for something that they're willing to purchase, and that's way outside of a realistic price range. So when it comes to pricing, Van Westendorp and Gabor-Granger, they're the sweet spot. They will answer the pricing questions that you want to find out, and they typically don't go hand in hand in the same study or in the same project. I'll explain that a little later on. So what is the difference between the two? How do these techniques work? How to know when to use one or to use it or to use the other? Well, let's get into it. We'll start with Van Westendorp. Van Westendorp price sensitivity meter is the full name of this research technique.
Hi, John. Can you give me 1 second?
Yes.
It looks like people were having trouble joining our call. And so I just want you to maybe do like just the intro just real quick over again in case somebody missed it, or they, unless you missed something really important, I wasn't really listening because I was trying to get
Absolutely.
people into the room.
Understood. Understood. Thank you
Yeah,
guys.
just do perfect. Thank you so much,
Apologies for
John. I
the
appreciate it.
inconvenience. We'll just start back at the very beginning. Haven't gone over much yet. I've just introduced the importance of Van Westendorp or Gabor-Granger. Just the fact that sometimes as researchers we may not be able to determine what the exact price point is for a product and service. We don't always know what the price elasticity for a product or a service is. The reason I say that is because there can be key competitor products that come into play. So you have to be ready on your feet for that. And things are always changing. There's a difference between how to evaluate new products versus existing products. So that's why that's the key reason why we're here today. And so far we've just focused on direct pricing research in general. These are two research techniques, so these are the two most popular forms of direct pricing research. And by direct pricing research, you're just asking about price itself, or that's the question that is being asked head on to your customers or your respondents. Whereas indirect pricing research, you're combining price with other attributes. So pricing would be a factor, but it isn't the factor. Direct pricing techniques, they're less expensive, as I mentioned before, less expensive, easy to incorporate with your surveys and your data, and easier to explain to your managers and your stakeholders. And they're certainly going to get you more accurate answers than as opposed to asking open-ended questions or leaving it at a one-off. Would you be willing to purchase at this price? Yes or no. It doesn't give you the full story. It doesn't give you the most accurate data. And it's more work than you need to as a researcher or as a programmer. It's just more work on your end. So it's not really worth the time. So as I mentioned before, Van Westendorp and Gabor-Granger, those are the sweet spot when it comes to direct pricing questions. And let's get into it. And we'll first cover Van Westendorp price sensitivity meter, talk about best practices, what that looks like, the analytics, and then we'll go into Gabor-Granger and do the same thing, as well as differentiate what are the key differences between the two, and also how they're similar to wrap it up before we go into Q&A. So thank you everybody again for joining on this Thursday or this Friday. Feel free to post any comments or any questions that you have in the worksheet as Crystal mentioned. And we thank you for attending. So what is Van Westendorp? Well, it was introduced by Peter Van Westendorp himself. This introduced in 1976. He is a Dutch economist, or he was a Dutch economist, and this research technique is still commonly used. It's still one of the more widely used approaches in market research a half a century later. This research technique is composed of 4 different pricing questions that we want to ask our consumers. I'll get to that on the next slide. And it's more often tested on products that are new, that are lower priced, and are well known. So something that, like for example, technology, like a Bluetooth speaker, for an example, something that's trendy, something that people want to buy, and it is affordable. And it's affordable, and you can find a product that is affordable and can fulfill the needs that you want. But these questions too, they combine price with quality. Price is the factor that's asked head on, but it combines price with quality, and it allows you to maximize the profit of a product or service that is sold within that price range. It allows you to prevent the perception among your customers that you're offering a low quality product. But at the same time, you're doing so without scaring potential or loyal customers away with large price tags. So you're finding that middle ground. That's what this research technique will do. And it allows you to gauge consumer perceptions on the value of the product that you're selling, because the customers are always right. And by determining psychologically what acceptable price is for a single product or service. And by doing that, you can determine its price elasticity as well. So what are the 4 key pricing questions? Well, the first one that you want to ask is, well, at which price do you think the product is too expensive to consider? At what price point, and this would be provided in an open-ended answer, a numeric open-ended answer by your respondents, is at what price point would you definitively say, no matter how good this product would be for me, it's too far out of my price range. Then you follow that up with, at what price would you think this product is getting expensive, but you still might consider it? There might be other factors involved, but you're still willing to pay, you're still willing to pay out of pocket at this given price. Followed by that, you ask at what price do you think the product is a bargain or a great buy for your money? So it's basically what's an ideal value for this price. And then lastly, you follow up with, at what price would you begin to think that this product is so inexpensive that you definitely decide to question the quality of a product, or the quality of this product or service, and as a result, you're definitely not going to purchase it. It's too cheap that you immediately tell yourself, I don't want it because it's probably not something I want to buy anyway. There's probably the quality or the affordability outdoes the quality, essentially. So let me do a quick walkthrough of what that would look like. So I'm gonna share my screen, and what I'm presenting to you is how that question looks like within our Question Pro platform. So take a look at this example, what I'm saying, and what you want to do is provide numeric answers or price points for each of these 4 questions. And for this example, I just used a nightlight Bluetooth speaker an example of something that is affordable for consumers, is hip and trendy. It's something that is well known. It's something that's well known, and as I mentioned, it's something that a lot of people want to purchase. So you would fill out these questions numerically, and as a general best practice, it's in the ordering of these questions. You can either start from too expensive and work your way down to too cheap, or you can do vice versa. I think there's no right or wrong about it. I do think it's more intuitive for your respondents to answer questions in which the price goes down, the numeric responses that they give either go up or they go down. So it's easier for them to track the past responses that they gave. It'll help them give more quality answers and allow them to be introspective to really understand at what point is this too expensive for me, or at what point would I consider this to be so cheap that I question its quality. And so what do those results look like? So I'm just going to close out this screen and go back to my slide. Oops. We're just going to take a look at the analytics real quick. And so what this does, looking at the analytics now, and I'll explain what all these different points are, what all these different intersections are. But we have color-coded for you in a line chart that is represented as cumulative percentages. And too cheap and not expensive would move downward on the chart. So they would go from 100% to 0%. And then vice versa for the line charts that represent what would be too expensive or what would be not a bargain. Those would move up from 0% to 100%. In between this shaded blue area, again, this is something that our platform is able to decipher, is the range of acceptable prices. So you don't want to look at anything beyond, anything beyond this range or anything beyond this range. What this tells you is this is the acceptable price range for this product if you were to sell this for your market. And it's divided up by the point of marginal cheapness and the point of marginal expensiveness. So what is that exactly? So the point of marginal cheapness, what this is this isn't the intersection where just as many of your respondents consider the price range to be too cheap, just as many as those that say too expensive. And what this represents, where this represents in sales, is that at this price point or cheaper, you will actually get a negative impact on your business because you're selling the product at too cheap of a cost. Whereas on the opposite end of the spectrum, this is your upper bound versus, whereas your point of marginal cheapness is your lower bound. Your point of marginal expensiveness is the upper bound. And this is the intersection where too expensive meets not expensive meets not expensive at all. And this represents the area where the price, what this reflects is that the area, that the price itself outweighs the benefit of the product. So if you sell it at a higher cost than this price point here, and this will be provided in the acceptable price ranges down below as well, that you won't be able to maximize your profit. Regardless of selling it at a higher cost, the demand for it will go down. Then you get to your optimal price point. This is the intersection for where too expensive meets too cheap. What this says is the same number of respondents consider the price to be unacceptable in both a positive and a negative sense. So just as many respondents found it to be too cheap as the number of respondents who found it to be too expensive. And then lastly, you get your indifference price point. This is where those that select too expensive are just as likely to say that this is a bargain price. This is where most of your customers will be indifferent to the price. So that this is really helpful in that it sort of delineates this range. So you know that you want to accept, or you want to sell this product between $13 and $25. But how do we really get down to figuring out where to maximize profit? At this price point here, roughly around $17, $18, this is where most people will be content with the price point. And the indifference price point, this is also called the expected normal price for a product or a service category. And the thing is between the indifference price point and the optimal price point is that they each help you delineate the best price within your range of acceptable prices. It sort of gets, so first you get your range of where you can get positive ROI, but indifference price point and optimal price point, that helps you really delineate where you're going to maximize your profit growth. So what are the best practices when it comes to using Van Westendorp? The first one is just focus on lower priced products as well as well-known products. For example, fast-moving consumer goods. Because we will have a broad target group, given the what's considered or needed by a large audience, if you're trying to test products that are too novel, something that respondents might find be difficult to grasp or image and have never owned before, despite their interest, have never owned before, or have never looked at the price range of it before, can lead to misleading results. And the same with products that are too unique or too niche. Unless you have that specific target group, your audience won't be as receptive, and as a result, you'll get misleading results in that realm as well. So there's that to take into consideration. Secondly, be sure to supplement this data by asking all the other essential purchase behavior questions that you would typically ask to fulfill your study. Keep in mind that the surveys are focused almost exclusively on price. So Van Westendorp does not measure the willingness to purchase. So you want to make sure that you ask that question to your audience as well. So you can't, because Van Westendorp won't allow you to determine the expected revenue or the margin of a product, of a service itself. So definitely supplement this approach with other questions as well. Like at a price between the price you identified as a bargain and the price that you said was getting expensive, how likely would you be to purchase at this price? Because you're looking for that optimization, not just understanding what price elasticity is. Thirdly, you want to make sure you interpret the perception shifts. With the point of marginal cheapness and the point of marginal expensiveness, between these 2 points, there could be a stronger perception shift if you adjust the price at one versus the other. So you definitely want to take all of these, all of these price points into consideration. Optimal price point will help you maximize the product growth, but you do also want to take a look at the indifference price point, because there could be a new product out there that doesn't have all the features. It doesn't live up to the quality of what you sell, but is sold at a significantly cheaper rate or at a cheaper price, which will, as a result, you'll lose customers. So how do you battle that? You can look at the indifference price point. You can see if you need to, how much you need to decrease the price of your product. That way, customers get as much value out of your product, if not more, as they would with key competitors. So it's another thing that you want to take into consideration. Two more points for best practices is, if you have a new or a different product, make sure to present it in a competitive environment. This will allow more realistic assessment for your respondents. So an example of that would be present it in a competitive environment. Don't just show the product alone. Show it on a shelf with other key competitors. So you provide respondents, or you provide customers with that context, and give them that foresight of, when they first see this product, or when they see this product in a shop, where will it be? You give respondents that foresight of that customer journey. And then lastly, filters are your friend. Make sure to check the quality of your participants' respondents. This goes without saying, but you do want to look out for those, for speeders, straight liners. By removing those, you'll have more clear insight about how people genuinely feel about, price-wise, how your respondents generally feel towards a product or a service. Another thing too is, if you want to segment your data, if you want to compare among brand loyalists versus non-brand loyalists, or if you want to compare male versus female, if you want to compare among different price ranges, make sure you do that as well. And then you can really get an understanding of, among those who are truly interested in this product, do those price ranges vary compared to those who are open to it, would like to purchase it, seems like a nice to have, but it isn't a must have. And with that, we're going to go into Gabor-Granger method now.
Oh, give me 2 seconds, John. I am so glad that you were able to walk us through that. And for everyone who's been joining us in as you've been going, I want to just make sure we do our housekeeping items one more time. And thank you for everyone who is struggling with some technical difficulties. We're so glad you're here. Please, if you have any questions, make sure to put them in the Q&A functionality at the bottom of your screen, and let us know where you're from in the chat window. We love knowing, where people are joining us from, and it gives us a better understanding of the reach of these webinars. And John, I was thinking we could maybe do our questions about Van Westendorp now, because since you're going into a whole different section, if that's okay, and then we could catch up the people who are joining us.
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay, so one of the questions was, in the Van Westendorp graph, can you add where competitive products sit price-wise? So if you could go back to the graph, probably. Within
a standard Van Westendorp graph, you probably couldn't. You probably have to manually implement that yourself, or you would have to put in a placeholder of, this is where our competitors lie. And that's also too another good practice for that, is to get a sense of correlation analysis, just to see that balance of price and quality. But and that's why I say you definitely want to make sure to supplement this research technique with other pricing related questions, because it doesn't take key competitors into consideration, and you want to put it in an environment where it is compared to key competitors. So you want to ask other questions as well, as are you willing to purchase this, versus are you willing to purchase this competitor product at the same price? Things like that. Or what would determine your purchase behavior if you were selecting between three different brands or a handful of different brands, anything like that. Or if you don't even know what brand you want to get, all those things.
I gotcha. And what would be an appropriate sample size for that kind of question?
The same would go for Van Westendorp as it does for Gabor-Granger. I know I haven't gotten into Gabor-Granger yet, but if you the best in terms of sample size, you want to make sure for each exercise you're getting at least 100 respondents. Now, if your intent is to segment this data as well, so if you wanted to compare among males versus females, you'll want to double that. You want to make sure that you double that sample size so that you have 100 respondents from each bucket. If you were comparing between 4 different price ranges, make sure that you have a total of 400 completes at least, or at least 100 completes within each of those age ranges, so that you avoid skewed data or inconsistent data, because a lot of times if the sample size is small enough, you won't get these intersections. So the charts won't provide you with that story, or the data won't come full circle for you. So for every segment that you want to include, have 100 completes.
Perfect. Okay. We have a few more, but I'll save them for the end. And now we can move on to Gabor-Granger.
Okay, great. Thanks, Crystal.
Yeah.
All right, so what is Gabor-Granger method? It was introduced by Andre Gabor, who was a pioneer in pricing research, had published work concentrated on 2 main themes: freedom and utility, as well as pricing theory and decisions. And it was also introduced by Sir Clive Granger, who was a Nobel Prize winner, actually one of the more prominent figures in the use of statistics and the study of the economy. And in fact, his methods applied a lot in the stock market, as well as in biology and engineering. Just some fun facts for you. But it was introduced actually before Van Westendorp was, so used back in the 1960s. And just like with Van Westendorp, over half a century later, it's still one of the more commonly used market research techniques today. So similar to, it's similar to Van Westendorp in that it focuses mainly on price and price elasticity, though it does aid price slightly more than Van Westendorp does, and it's actually a simpler and more speedy technique. But basically, what it does, it's a variant on monadic price testing, and it asks respondents their likelihood that they will buy a product or a service at a variety of different price points, and that typically ranges between 5 to 10 different price points, depending on the product's price elasticity, and also depending on how the researcher lays out those different prices, whether if you want to ask that as a yes/no type question, or if you want to ask that on a 5-point scale, and then you would capture your top 2 box audience in case you wanted to split out those who are extremely likely to purchase versus those who are slightly likely, or just likely to purchase. It's used primarily on existing products to determine if you can raise the cost of something that you sell without sacrificing or reducing product sales too much. So essentially, if the decrease of sales, if the decrease in sales does not outweigh the increase in return on investment or in profit. And I'll get into that and show you visually how that would work. And what it does is it also asks, our respondents ask about all these different price points. Well, they most likely won't. And we'll get into that shortly as well. And the end result is that you're able to determine if an existing product's price can be raised. And also too, this exercise doesn't compare products, like I mentioned with Van Westendorp, it doesn't compare products with a competitor, but you can use this as a ballpark for products where direct comparison of a competitor, you can offer those realistic price points within there. So let's just do a walkthrough. And then something that I hadn't mentioned before is that Gabor-Granger was manually built within our system. It hasn't officially been a feature. It currently isn't an official feature that we have set up. Like, it's not an actual question type yet. It is currently being worked on by our product team in QA and in our lab site. So we're still working on the tweaks of it, but we will have ready, and it will be ready available as a pricing analysis question some point during the middle of Q4. But this is how the question would look like. It would be part of our advanced family of questions under pricing analysis. So you would be able to click there. And then from there, you can set up the number of different price points that you want to ask your respondents. Would you purchase this at a cost of 200, 300, 400, so on and so forth. Like I said, you want to keep it between 5 to 10 price points, and you want to have the intervals be consistent as well. It'll make reading the data more readable, and it's more consistent for your audience to provide genuine insights. So you have the option to manually set it up, so you can create more granular windows, or you can customize it so that specific price points, so it's more easily readable, like 100, 200, 300, so on and so forth, are included. But you can also split that up as well in case you wanted to set random prices for your audience. So this is a difference between manual and automatic. Is that with automatic, is that you can set up your initial price point, and then you can add steps as you go until you reach that max price point. So whatever that interval is, the difference between these two divided by the 6 steps or the 5 steps, that'll get you with those granular price points. That's if you set up as automatic. And now for price path. This is basically how you want to situationally ask your respondents questions. So the way we have it set up is to start it at random, and you have the option to have it be random. What that basically does is you can have the starting price be at a certain point, and if respondents think that are not likely to purchase a product at $300, then we work down, and then we ask, what about at $200? What about $100? And we keep asking that question until the respondent says yes, and then they're done with that exercise. Likewise, if they are willing to pay for a product at $300, we ask, okay, now what about at 400? What about at 500 or 600? And we keep asking those questions until the respondent finally says, no, that's too pricey for me. It's not likely for me to purchase that product. So there's 2 different types of price paths, as I mentioned. There's random, and then there's sequential. So sequential, what sequential price path does is you start at a random point, and you gradually work your way up, one interval at a time. Likewise, if you were to set the initial price at 600 and respondents said no, then they would be asked this question. If they kept saying no, then they would be asked at a lower price point until they either say no at 100 or they say yes at any of these price points. Then there's random price path, in which any respondent all respondents are randomly start at a specific price point. It's randomly selected. So it could very well be that members only see 2 different price points because a respondent could be randomly assigned to ask, or you can set the price point to 300, and if they say no, you can randomly send them straight to 100. That way, in case they do say yes, then you could say, okay, what about in between? What about at $200? And they'll either say yes or no, and then they'll be done with that exercise because they've already said no to 300. They've said yes to 100. Now we just have to determine what their willingness to pay if the price was at 200. And so now the survey experience. Well, as we go into analytics, this is the kind of data that you want to look for. Again, just like with Van Westendorp, the charts that you want to see, the willingness of a member purchasing a product should be presented should be presented similar to a demand curve that represents cumulative frequency, and it decreases from left to right. And it just covers acceptable price ranges or realistic price ranges for the product for the existing product that you're selling to your audience, or potential new price points that you want to adjust to maximize ROI and profit. So the first chart that you want to look at is understanding just the customer's willingness to purchase. You notice that if you are setting the price range to 200, you still have half of your customers who want to purchase this. You notice that if I was selling a product at $50, almost everybody is willing to buy it. But just because everybody wants to buy this at $50 doesn't mean that that this is the price point where I'm going to maximize my profit, where I'm going to maximize my ROI. It's got to be somewhere in between. So how do we determine that? So these are your more important results. And what this chart does, it takes the price point, and you multiply the percentage of those who are willing to pay at that price point, and then multiply by your customer size. And in this case, for simplicity, let's keep it at a pool of 1,000 customers. So out of your 1,000 customers, and from there, you'll be able to see what this chart reflects is your return of investment, depending on at what cost or at what price you set for the products that you sell. So say you were selling a product at $130 and you needed to see if you can set it at a higher price without sacrificing return of investment. It turns out in this case you can. And in fact, you can actually maximize your return of investment if the price range is set to around $160 or $175. And let's go back one for a second so we can look at that. We can see, almost 3/4 of your audience will be willing to pay at this price point. And it's $175. You still have a majority of your audience, so about 2/3. So that is a good thing to take it. It is important to take that into consideration because, again, there can be other key competitors that come into play and disturb your market or disturb your product by promoting something that almost has all of the features or is almost at the same quality as your product, but is at a significantly cheaper price. Anything along those lines. So to go back to that, this is where you are in terms of determining how to maximize profit in the product that you sell. So what are the best practices for Gabor-Granger? Well, just like with Van Westendorp, make sure to supplement this data by asking all of the other essential purchase behavior questions. Gabor-Granger approach does not take competitive brands into account and can even suffer from bias due to the fact that customers are becoming sensitized purely to price. So you do want to make sure you take other purchase intent questions into consideration, or brand measurement questions into consideration, like awareness, like familiarity, willing to switch brands, what features in a certain product or certain brands are more appealing than others, things like that. Secondly, make sure to keep your Gabor-Granger questions on separate pages. So respondents will be asked two or more different price ranges, but for quality response sake, you want your respondents to ignore previous respondents and just focus on the price presented to them on that screen, just as they would be if they were to go into a store and look at a product. They're only going to see one price. So let's keep it at one price per screen, so that they don't have to reflect on the previous responses that they gave. And then thirdly, use realistic price ranges. So for example, if the current price of a product that you sell is at $60, let's assess the willingness to purchase and return of investment between the price ranges of 40 and 80 rather than 200 or 100. Very likely will a product be $60 and you want to nearly double the cost of that product, or you want to have it cost less than half of what it is now. Very unlikely that that will be the case. So just to reflect on these two different research approaches, what are the key differences? So Van Westendorp focuses more on new products more often, whereas Gabor-Granger is going to focus more on existing products. With Van Westendorp, you're less sure of what the price points are or what the market will potentially accept. So you want to understand those price ranges first, and what's your audience's attitudes situationally if you were to set your product at specific prices. With Gabor-Granger, you're really testing the elasticity of demand to see if it's possible to further maximize revenue regardless of the number of sales. Secondly, Gabor-Granger provides the price points, whereas Van Westendorp does not. With Gabor-Granger, the pricing is intrinsic to the platform. You're guiding the respondent by asking them, okay, what about at this price? What about at that price? With Van Westendorp, the respondent provides the price points in the 4 questions that are asked to them. And because of that, pricing in Van Westendorp is subject to change on the product and the competitor's activities in that relevant market. Whereas Gabor-Granger doesn't take that into effect, doesn't take those competitors into consideration. And then the last key difference is only certain price ranges are surveyed and assessed in Gabor-Granger. Whereas with Van Westendorp, you can see the whole spectrum from 100% to 0% among your audience that finds it suitable, from 100% of your audience finding a suitable price to none of your audience finding a suitable price. So there really is no floor price presented, which makes sense because Gabor-Granger, you're asking the prices head on, whereas with Van Westendorp, respondents are giving you what they see being the price. Though they are very similar to each other. They're more similar to each other than they are different. They both help set prices for a product, and they both help you project price elasticity as well, especially in circumstantial situations like other key competitors coming into play, or if you're trying to promote a product that's already in a competitive market, but your product is cheaper, or it has an additional feature that folks idealize. That sort of gives you both of these will give you the map and understanding, if you need to lower the price of your product or if you need to increase it. So when doing analysis, the plots of these are set up to reflect cumulative percentages as well, which is key because you definitely want to take into consideration, what chunk of your audience is willing to purchase at this price, as well as what will be the return of revenue in a pool of X number of individuals or X number of customers in your pool, in your market. And lastly, they're cheap and easy, and they'll get you directly correct results. And they'll guide you along the way. So thank you all for attending today's webinar. I will leave the floor to any other questions that you guys have. Definitely feel free to connect with me at any point. And again, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you being here, and I hope you've learned a lot and can take this forward for future research initiatives.
Great. So we do have a couple questions. Let me get back to my notes. Hold on. Okay. When you show competitors with the product being tested, will you show respondents their price and give them general range of the category?
You can certainly do that. I think the more factors that come into play, the more accurate your respondents will give you a price range of what they find acceptable, what they find valuable. Especially for Van Westendorp, if something is too cheap, that I don't even want to consider it because what's the catch, you know? So things like that, I think for both exercises, they'll definitely give you a better sense of what it is that, or what the price range would be ideal for your customers and how you can maximize profit growth, especially too, you want it to end. And like I said, you definitely want to do brand evaluation exercises as well, or ask brand evaluation questions, because when you ask all those questions, it's the data itself will come full circle for you.
Cool. Okay. Is there a way to control data quality of responses within the Van Westendorp answers? There are usually those that answers questions illogically, where cheap prices are listed, etc.
Certainly. So something I actually forgot to mention, and that's actually a great question. Thank you so much for asking. Is that we can set for Van Westendorp, we can set a max price range and a minimum price range so that we maintain those results. Not only that, too, for quality control's sake, you definitely want to look at your data and check for any speeders. Make sure that you monitor, make sure you go through the survey itself, go through each exercise to see how long it will take you, the researcher and the tester, how long it will take for you to get through the survey, how long it would take a normal respondent, your average respondent, to get through a survey. So that way, if the time of completion is completely out of that range, it probably meant that the respondents sped through the survey and just didn't give genuine results. And same for those who are straight liners. So check matrix questions, check single select, multi-select questions. If you notice that your respondents kept answering the first option at the top of the list, definitely take that in consideration as well, and filter those folks out so that you can get cleaner and more genuine results, and that reflect brand forward results or product forward results.
Cool, I gotcha. Is there a general rule of thumb for excluding outliers in Van Westendorp?
Within the Van Westendorp exercise itself, there is not. But fortunately for us, the way we have it set up is that not only can we allow minimum and maximum price ranges for all 4 questions, the way we have it set up within our system is that we will detect anybody who gives an answer that doesn't logically add up. So for example, if a respondent gives a higher price range for the bargain question than they would for the too expensive question, that doesn't make sense. The platform will detect that and say, your response must be lower than what you provided up top that asks what price range would be considered too expensive for you.
Okay. On the Van Westendorp graph, why does the blue area in the pricing graph go above the graphed responses?
Now let me go back once. Let me go back to
Great.
that.
Let's get some hands-on. Perfect. Here we go.
Do you mind repeating that question for me?
Here we go. Why does the blue area in the pricing graph go above the graphed responses?
So what this does is reflect the range in which you find so the range of acceptable prices reflects the minimum and the maximum bound in which the price range for a product would be acceptable, and there would be a return of investment for your brand or for your company. This reflects the percentages of people. So this isn't saying that 70% of people said directly that they're willing, it's not that 70% specifically said that at $8 this would be a cheap or a good value. What this is saying is that out of your pool of, say, 100 people, 70 of them, or 70% would consider this price to be valuable. Whereas if the price range was at $12, 60% would find this to be an acceptable range. So it's not that this range reflects the areas in which people find these ranges where most people find these ranges to be acceptable. So it's positive for them, and it's positive for your brand as well, or your company as well, to sell within these price ranges, because you will get a positive return of investment. You just need to delineate these price ranges by looking at optimal price point and indifference price point, because you get to see, it reflects and it shows, because it intersects the number of people who perceive this to be too cheap, but it also at the same point as those who find it too expensive. So you get an equivalent sense of people who look at this price range negatively, but it also gives you a minimal sense. But the number of people that feel negative about this price range is minimal. Like, see down below here, maybe about 10 to 15% each. So a little less than 30% total would say that this is not an acceptable price range, in that it's either too cheap or that it's too expensive. But what this chart tells you, and it's just not to repeat myself, but what this chart will tell you, that what this reflects, is the area in which most members, or most of your market, most of your consumers will see this price range, whether it be between $13 or $24.50 or $25, and that would be acceptable for you and for your brand in terms of ROI.
Great. Okay, one more question, and we will have gone through all of them. This is great. Which method is more preferred for assessing line extension potential pricing wise?
Do you mind repeating that?
Yeah,
one?
I can say it again. Sorry,
Like
I didn't proofread it ahead of time.
Like extension
Okay.
to current products type deal?
Here we go. Which method is more preferred for assessing line extension potential pricing wise?
I think in that case, you would probably you would probably rather end up going with Gabor-Granger, because it is an extension of already existing products that are well known to your audience, and will include new features, but also maintain a lot of the new ones that your audience is familiar with. I think you'll probably end up, it'll probably end up working out for you if you're going with Gabor-Granger, especially too if the extension of the product that you provide doesn't have any other competitors out there, because highest priority for a brand is return of investment, regardless of the number of people who are willing to purchase this product. You want to have it so that a majority of your respondents, want to purchase this product, but a lot of it too depends on return of investment. And the thing is too about Gabor-Granger, when you look at these, if you look at this chart and you wanted to promote, or you wanted to sell an extension product or an extension line of products, you can start at this price range to begin with. And then what this story tells you is that even if you were to drop the price to 130, return of investment will still be very, very high, especially in the case where a key competitor comes in, provides, has a product similar to yours, but is much, much cheaper. So you're going to lose customers that way. So it's always better to, I think if you already have a sense of what the price of an existing product is, and you just want to figure out slight differences in return of investment by tweaking the product or by tweaking the price slightly more, slightly less, then you definitely want to focus more on Gabor-Granger.
Cool. That's great. And that's our time. We really appreciate everyone. And as a reminder, we will be sending out this as a recording, a slide deck, and Q&As all in the next couple of days. So if you missed something or wanted to rewatch it, don't worry, because we will be sending it out again. So thank you so much, John. We really appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us. And thank you everyone for coming. We do appreciate your time.
Yeah, of course, Crystal. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, everybody.
Have a great afternoon or evening or wherever you are.
Thanks, everybody.